Hi guys, this is Olga Redding with Iowa Organic Association. I am the Education Outreach Coordinator for Iowa Organic Association, and welcome everyone to this webinar today. I'm actually getting a couple of emails from folks that for some reason didn't get the link, so I'm sending an email to them right now. But welcome, everyone. So we have a wonderful program for you guys today in regards to CSP. And Rubyana Neely will share with you more about these programs and all this information. So what we will do, you guys, is we will I have about 5 slides where I'll share about Iowa and our mission and what we do. It'll take me about 5 minutes to share those slides. And then after that, Rubiana will take over and she will share about CSP. Rubiana has been with NRCS for 20 years and she's got a wealth of knowledge in regards to this. So definitely, if you have questions, feel free to share, type them into the chat box as they come up. What I will do is I will ask those questions of Rubiana at the end of her presentation during the Q&A portion of the event. However, in the meantime, if you don't mind muting yourself, that would be great. You can keep your video on if you want. And then at the end for Q&A, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd rather just ask the question that way rather than type it into chat. That works just fine. And we'll go ahead and get started here. So I'll share my presentation first. All right, guys. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with us, but for those of you that are not, this is a handy little presentation to share about Iowa and what we do. So welcome everyone. Iowa Organic Association was established in 2006 and we are a nonprofit organization committed to organic education, advocacy, and community cooperation. Our mission is to advance organic agriculture and food systems in the state of Iowa, and our members represent a diverse community of Iowa's farmers, businesses, and anyone and everyone that wants to champion the organic movement, including consumers. As far as our overarching priorities, education, outreach, and advocacy, and building a community are top priorities. As far as education is concerned, we provide programs such as the one that you're attending today, to share expertise and information and to help you with various resources that are available to you. Some of the things that we have done over the years are these growing organic expertise sessions, specifically geared towards technical service providers. And we've worked with NRCS folks before. We also have received a REAP SEP grant through Iowa Department of Natural Resources and have done, this is actually our second year where we have done the growing organic expertise at colleges across Iowa. So with that particular program, we've reached 10 colleges last year and we were going back to 10 more colleges this year. So we're visiting with students that are in the agriculture field or environmental sciences fields. In addition, we created the Midwest Organic Pork Conference, and we're, always involved with field days, obviously webinars, have a variety of online resources on our website if you're not familiar. We also participate in various conferences such as Moses, which is now known as Marble Seed, PFI, various trade shows, and the calendar page on our website is a useful one. It shows all of these different events that are happening across the field. As far as advocacy, we always try to connect with state level leadership to, help with policies in supporting the Iowa's growing organic industry. We've been in touch with Secretary Naig. We've given him some of the priorities that we thought were important. And then, of course, building a community is what we're here, we're all about. So you guys are part of that community. So thank you for being here today. Another helpful tool that we usually have available to you guys in PDF version on our website, as well as in paper format. So if you guys are interested to have this organic resource directory mailed to you, feel free to connect with me. I'm more than happy to mail you a paper copy. Otherwise, you can download the PDF right under our resources page. And this particular directory has over 900 businesses, nonprofits, and service providers that are here to help the organic community. And we believe this particular resource directory serves as a valuable tool for you guys, and we hope you can utilize it. As far as some of the additional programs that we've been showcasing through various grants, are obviously programs through the Farm Service Agency, such as the Organic Certification Cost Share Program that you guys are probably familiar with. If you're not, feel free to check out the webinars regarding that on our YouTube channel. The deadline for that, I believe, is coming up at the end of this month. So if you haven't submitted your paperwork, definitely be sure to do that. And then the non-insured crop disaster assistance program is another wonderful program for the FSA. The environmental quality incentive program, EQIP, is another wonderful program for NRCS. I believe Rubyana will touch briefly on that. The deadline for that is coming up on October 7th. And CAP 138 is another great program through NRCS that is available to you guys as well. And as I mentioned, we have done quite a few webinars on a lot of these programs, so feel free to check out our YouTube channel to get a refresher on some of those if you're not familiar with them already. And then, of course, as a small nonprofit organization, we rely heavily on your support. So if you're not already a member and would like to consider becoming one, memberships start from $50 a year, and there's various sponsorship levels too. If you're interested, feel free to connect with either Roz, our executive director, or myself. Our emails are listed here, and they're also listed on our website. And again, thank you so much for being part of this webinar today. And I'll go ahead and let Rubyana take over. Rubyana, if you want to start, that'd be great.
Thank you. Give me a sec to switch screens and we'll get started. Hello, I'm Rubyana Neely. I've been working for NRCS for 20 years, as she said. I just took this position in February, so I'm still new, but I'm trying to promote it and advocate it. So that's where I started out with today and reaching out to new customers. So Conservation Stewardship Program. No one knows more about, trying to minimize so I can see the screen. No one knows more about your land than you do, and no one knows more about conservation than we do. Together, we can develop a plan tailored to your land and your goals to help to increase productivity and protect the value of your land. So that's the main goal of CSP, is to work with you. So I just wanted to give you some Iowa statistics just to give you a fill-in of where we are with organics. CSP is the largest federal conservation program by acreage in the nation. This year, we had $16.5 million that we spent. And just total contracts through all CSP programs, we had about 370. And I wanted to say that we have specific funds that are targeted towards organic producers. And so this year we received $400,000 to be used towards organic. So just want to give you an incentive that there are funds available for you as a specific organic farmer. But I just want to tell you that currently there is only 22 active CSP organic contracts in Iowa, and Iowa is the third largest organic producers. So we have a long ways to go to do our outreach to organic farmers. So I just wanted to tell you what CSP is in a nutshell. So if you walked in my door at a field service center and you said, hey, I hear about the CSP, what's it about? These are my key points that I like to point out, that it's a 5-year contract and you will receive an annual payment each year, typically in the fall after October 1st when our fiscal year starts. It's paid in the things that you did last year. So it's kind of paid after you do the work so that we guarantee that you've done it. The program is typically intended for the operator, as that's who's eligible for the program. And we do whole farm planning. So we normally run a report that has all your tracks that you farm and operate. And so then we will have a discussion about your whole operation and how you manage it. And new conservation practices are required with this program. We'll do one on each land use. So land use being like pasture, cropland, associated ag land, and farmstead. We'll go into what all of those definitions are here later. And your payments would be one time or multiple years. So a one-time practice might be if you're doing brush management and you do that in 1 year, you'd be paid 1 year. Multiple years would be more your management practices, which would be related to like cover crops and no-till, where once you start doing the practice, you continue doing it for the life of the contract and you receive an annual payment on that. I just wanted to do a little bit of comparison between EQIP and CSP because there's kind of a lot of confusion about what are the differences between the two programs. So they have different conservation targets, and that EQIP is addressing 1 or 2 specific resource concerns that you walk in the door about, while CSP is encouraging maintenance of existing conservation and an adoption of new activities. So again, we're looking at every resource concern that would be applicable to your operation. And back to the planning of the whole farm, requires existing conservation efforts at time of application. So you will be giving credit for any crop rotation, say that you're already implementing. So that would go into the benefits of your ranking. There is different payment limitations between the two programs in that the maximum you can receive for CSP is $200,000. It might not be the same each year. You might get $40,000 one year and $20,000 another. It's all related to how many enhancements you have scheduled each year, but the maximum you could receive is $200,000. And we already mentioned that it's a 5-year contract in every case. After 5 years, we can do a CSP renewal and you can extend it for another 5 years if you get eligible. Contract must include practices. That's optional with CSP. And also there are enhancements which are different with CSP than EQIP, and we'll go into those definitions later. And like I said, these are paid 1 time a year after October 1st, not right after you do the practice. So let's go on who's eligible for this program. You must be the operator, owner, or other tenant of an agricultural operation that you have established with FSA. And you have to be sharing in the risk of the crop production, like that you're making the decisions about this operations. You're the one that's making those choices. So these are your definition of being eligible. Land eligibility, the following land use is part of your ag operations. So we have private agricultural land, which would include your cropland and your pasture land. If you had agricultural Indian lands, they would be eligible. NIF is our non-industrial private forest land. So that would be any ground that you have in timber that is normally being grown for production, like that you intend to sell the timber in the future. Associated ag land is all the little extra areas on the farm that you might leave to grass. Those would be associated. So if you had a field border along your field, or if you had a creek and you had an existing filter strip, those would all be considered associated ag land uses. Your farmstead is where your building sites are for your house, or if you had any barns, those would all be considered forest farmstead. And public land is also eligible if you are the actual operator and you're renting the ground and you have control of the decisions that are made. You can enroll ground that's public land that you operate. So CSP planning, this is the heart of CSP to me, in between me as an NRCS employee and you as an applicant. We want to visit your field and look at all of your sites and see how you manage it. We might look to identify any resource concerns that are present, like if you have enough femoral gully, or if we see sheet and reel erosion, we might suggest cover crops or no-till as ways that you could add for enhancements to your things. We would like to sit down with all of your maps of ground to operate, and we determine eligible lands. So this is where we would determine what is cropland, what is pasture, what's farmstead, what existing practices do you have? Do you have grass waterways? Do you have terraces? Do you have field borders? And we identify all of those because those become part of our planning of what we do and our ranking. So that goes into our ask management questions. So I want to ask you about all of your operation and how you manage it. So I will go into your crop rotation, your tillage, your nutrient management, your pest management, just to get an idea of how you manage it. And then that goes into our ranking. And then I like to discuss with you these areas of practices to improve, because you will have to schedule at least one new enhancement with this application that you have for the program. So this is the fun part where you get to interact with your NRCS employees and you get to discuss your operation and where you want to go with it. So this is my favorite part of the CSP application. So then this data that I gathered doing our interview, we go into our ranking system. And our ranking system is looking at what you have already done. So those are your existing practices and your management. How much you are willing to do to address natural resource concerns. So that goes into your new practices enhancements that you have scheduled. And then how many resource concerns are being met or exceeded at the beginning and the end of the contract. So that is a criteria for the program, is how many that you meet. And NRCS uses a tool that we call the Conservation Assessment Ranking Tool. And it's just a series of questions that we answer related to how you say you operate it. And then that gives us a total score for ranking and selection. So what I was talking about, meeting resource concerns. So for general CSP general applications, an applicant must meet or exceed the stewardship threshold on all land uses included in the operation for both of the following. So you have to meet at least 2 resource concerns at the time of the contract offer. And then by the end of the contract, you need to meet at least one more. So you are meeting 3 resource concerns by the end of the contract. I just wanted to go into these resource concerns just a little bit. These are our high priorities. So we're looking at degraded plant condition, inefficient energy use, livestock production, water quality, air quality impacts, soil quality degradation, insufficient water, and we have terrestrial habitat and weather resilience, controlled erosion and wind and erosion. So these are all the things that could be going on in your field, and that's why we asked you about your management, to see on like what level of management do you hit related to concentrated erosion. Are you meeting all of it? So you're addressing it. Wind and water erosion is normally related to your tillage and how much is out there and what's your soil loss related to that. So those are just an idea of why we ask you as many questions, because we're looking to get to these answers of, are you addressing these resource concerns? And these are set up by national, and there's a lot of them, as you can see, and different ones are used for different land uses. So you have cropland and pasture have different criteria of what type of questions we're going to ask you. So I wanted to go into the 3 types of payments that are available through CSP. So there is an annual contract payment that is the same from year to year to year. One of the payments is based on land uses. So if you have 100 acres of pasture ground, and there's a payment rate for pasture ground is $3 an acre, so you get paid 300. Let's see, I did my math. $3 times 100 would be $300 just for that land use. We also look at how many resource concerns are met at the time of the application. So if you're meeting 4 resource concerns, you get paid for the fact that you're meeting those resource concerns, and that's $300 per resource concern. So you could be potentially getting $1,200 just for that element on your contract. We also have supplemental payments for improvement of activities and or enhancements. So those are looking at our activities, our enhancements, our bundles. So those are all the extra things. And they have a different rate per which type of enhancement you choose. And then there's a payment contract minimum of $1,500. So even if you have a small operation, you're still going to get $1,500 at a minimum. There is a maximum for contracts, which we already discussed, of $200,000 for the life of the contract. Just wanted to go into some of the practices. These are actually the same as EQIP. They have the same criteria and the same management. These are ones that are on existing CSP contracts, having brush management, herbaceous weed control, seeding down conservation cover, going into conservation crop rotation, which kind of is a common thing that you use in organic to help control your weeds. So that's a prime one to help you transition from organic and transitioning. That's a good one to choose. Prescribed burning would be on like your associated ag land if you had that, or conservation cover if you wanted to help reduce it or improve the diversity on your native grasses. Cover crops is just a great soil health thing to improve your soil and also help control weeds over winter or in between crops that you plant. Field border helps create your separations that you need potentially between your fields and conventional farming. So that's another thing to consider. The next ones are more your pasture systems related to your forest harvest management, pasture and hay planting, prescribed burning, and nutrient management might also be another key one of looking at what rate you're putting those on. So practices are a flat rate that you receive. Then there's a bonus with CSP in that we have enhancements. Enhancements are only for CSP contracts. They take practices one more step in conservation. So these are more specific to a certain task or a certain resource concern you want to address. So there's a lot of soil health crop rotations on here, modifications to improve soil health, targeting certain species in a terrestrial habitat. That would be your monarchs or your pollinators. These might be some sort of that you want to put on a field border on the edge of your field to help with your pollination of whatever crop that you're planting. Trying to pick out some of the good ones that might be of interest to you. There's also an enhanced field border to reduce soil erosion. So that might be adding, I think it's 30 feet to your existing field border. So that's the benefit of that. There's a lot of 528s that are prescribed grazings. There's a lot of different ways that you can improve your prescribed grazing system by implementing a bale and swath grazing system to move around and availability of grazing, and management of intensive rotational grazing is looking at how you're utilizing your different paddocks and putting them in. And then we also have our nutrient management again. So these are actual enhancements that have been scheduled on existing organic contracts. Just give you an idea of what's out there. All of these job sheets, because there's criteria associated with all of these of what you need to do and what the payment rates are all on our Iowa SharePoint. So if you want to go and read this, they're typically 2 or 3 pages long. There are sometimes supplementals for Iowa that are specific to how we want it to be managed. So there's also a third option for payments is CSP bundles. And these enhancements are working together to provide an increased conservation benefit. There's at least 3 bundles or 3 enhancements associated with each bundles. And I just listed 2 on here that do exist. They're more specifically for organic. So you're looking to add mulching, nutrient management, pest management, filter strips, and a tree planting. So that would be one bundle, and you have to do, I think you have to do each of these to be eligible. And then there's also one that's more an erosion bundle. So you're looking at your crop rotation, your nutrient management, your pest management, your residue management, and adding in a cover crop. So this is helping protect and improve soil health on your operation. So those would be 2 CSP bundles you might consider. They get paid at a higher rate since you're doing multiple practices all in one. So your next steps is how do you apply? As Olga mentioned, our deadline is October 7th. That's part of why we had this training so early, was that if you are interested, I highly recommend going down to your local NRCS office today or tomorrow and submitting a 1200 application. If you don't have time to actually visit your field office, they can take an application via a phone or an email. So if you want to contact somebody in your NRCS, that would count as submitting an application before the deadline. We normally request that you provide maps. We use FSA certification maps. Those work just fine. It gives us an outline of your whole of your farm and where we can start planning. So I've already mentioned the deadline. I put on here our NRCS website, which will have all of the information that I covered today in way more detail. So if you're interested in that, go and check out our website. So that is the end of my presentation, and I am open to any questions. Feel free to ask. I covered a lot of material in a short amount of time. I just wanted to give an introduction to CSP and what it could be for you.
Wonderful. Rubyana, do you mind sharing in the previous slide, the one before this one, you had that big link that folks can access. Do you mind copying the link and actually sharing it via chat for everyone? That way people can snag it directly from the chat.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we did get a couple of questions from Margaret. Margaret, thank you for always having great questions. Okay, so her first question is the payment limitation for each 5-year contract or for the life of the operator?
That is a very good question. It's for the contract, and there's normally, so they're also based on the farm bill. So since the contract is 5 years, you would be into another farm bill. So you could have a second contract and you could have another $200,000. So that is it's per farm bill actually that the 200,000 limitation is.
Per farm bill. So basically someone could potentially apply now, and then when the new farm bill gets put together, then they could potentially apply again once that. Yep. Okay. So there's double opportunity here for you guys.
Yes.
All right. Next question. Are prairie strips on a list to be added to the list of practices?
They are on the list already. It's basically under conservation cover under 327. There's a specific scenario that's related to prairie strips. So it has been incorporated into our practices. Prairie strips you could also use for the pollinator seeding for that enhancement or the monarch one. So there are a couple different options because it's basically just a native seeding. So we can incorporate it in a lot of different ways.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, you guys, we have 23 of you still hanging on here. So you guys got to give us some questions because we have a little extra time here today. So all the questions are welcome. This is your opportunity to get some answers given to you right away. So Monica says, will you share the presentation? Yes, I am happy to share the presentation with everyone. So what I'll do to you guys, since this is part of one of our grants that we are, one of the grants that we have, we always need your feedback. So after this presentation is done, I'll actually share the link to the recording that will be posted on our YouTube channel, as well as a short survey that will take you about 5 minutes to respond. So that would be greatly appreciated if you could take the time to do that. And I'll also include the presentation in PDF format, Monica, so that way everyone can have that handy and can look through if needed. Tom, can you discuss the whole farm planning piece and how it relates to an organic system plan?
Yeah, that's back to the farming piece, the interview that I talked about, where that we'll ask you about your management to say, how are you doing it now? And then we can relate it to the resource concerns. So that's where, yeah, I would, if you walked in the door, I'm like, what type of crop rotation do you have? Do you have a corn soybean, or with your organic, do you have a corn soybean, hay, 3 years of hay or something like that? So then that gives me a background of what type of operation you have. Are you no-till, which isn't always common with organic, but so how do you prep the soil before you plant your crop, and how do you control your pests? What techniques do you use? Do you, in that way, nutrient management, what we look at nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So what rate are you applying that? So then that gets into your nutrient management. And how it relates to organic system planning is, I think it can help you transition. It also gives you supplemental money while you're in this process, that you can be gaining some money while you're transitioning through these different steps that are required for you to become organic. So that's why I think there's a great opportunity with CSP to help cover all of these expenses or these transitions and give you a little bit of extra income in this process of changing from conventional to organic. So that's why I think there's some definite benefits for CSP.
Okay, yeah, that sounds really good, especially for those transitioning, because those 3 years of the transition are at most times the hardest years for farmers to get through, figure out all the new practices that are involved in the organic system. Margaret has another question. She says, can you take the organic records for the overview of what practices? And Margaret, if you want to unmute yourself, I'm not sure I understand the question personally.
Thank you. I would appreciate that myself.
Well, so Rubyana, what you're discussing is what's your crop rotation, what's your tillage practices. We write all that down in our organic plan at the beginning of the year. And then when we get ready for certification, it's all written down. Can you just take a copy of that, and with that, so you don't have to re-interview?
That detailed, I think the interview we do initially is to help with the ranking and your eligibility. So we also want to be able to help plan through you of where your operation is and how you can do it. You do need to maintain your starting system for the life of the contract, because we're giving you credit, and part of your payment is based on how you're currently managing your operation. So you can keep records. Mainly the records are required for the enhancements and the practices. We will need specific documentation that is described in each enhancement, what is required for like nutrient management.
Sure.
You might put. So yeah, each enhancement has its detail. You are expected to maintain what you start with, but we won't ask for those records every year for your existing system. We might just ask a question, are you still managing it the same? So there's a little bit of self-certification. So you don't need to bring in every single bill or everything like that. But if we are paying you for a specific enhancement, then we'll have a documentation list. And that is presented to you at the beginning of the contract, so you know what you're required to do. We're not going to throw any surprises on you.
So I'm going to ask another Olga. So Rubyana, we have just completed our second CSP contract, and I think we've changed rotations during that period. So, the rotation changes slightly, but that's more common on an organic farm than on conventional. Yep. That's okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. So the other question I had then was about the field border enhancement. Again, we all maintain field borders, and depending on the certifier, determines the width. Okay. But if we already have a 30-foot border, are you talking about an enhancement of making it a 60-foot border, doubling the width? Okay, or planting, if we were to plant something more diverse, I guess that would go under another practice, right?
Probably, yeah, because each enhancement has its certain criteria. So that's why you would have to talk to your planner, your NRCS planner in your local field office, and figure out where you stand. So yeah, you have existing field borders, but you might want to expand them and make them wider. So then that's where you would do the 386. You would do the field border enhancement. If you have an existing field border and you want to add diversity to it, then you could go into the conservation cover practices, and that's where you could get into a monarch seeding or a pollinator habitat seeding. Sure. So which ones fit your operation the best, and where are you willing to go? I mean, yours is going to be interesting since yours is the third time you're enrolling. What's new that you want to change and improve in your operation? So yeah,
we're running out of practices, and that's okay. That's okay. That means we're where we want to be. That's just fine.
I think it's a good thing. It means you kind of graduated on, because some people are like, they want to renew and renew and renew, and there might get to a point where you're not eligible for it because you don't want to add more, and you have an operation you're completely happy with. If you're meeting the conservation needs that meet you as the applicant. So yes, you can graduate out of the program, as I say. And I think that's fabulous. You have a great operation, it sounds like.
Well, we have a couple more practices we want to try to accomplish in 5 years, and then I think we'll be, you know, practiced out, as you said, where we want to
That's
be.
exciting. So yes.
But so the field border practice is really great for someone just coming into organic. That's perfect because they need to start establishing those. Nice practice.
Yes, it is.
Are there any other practices, Margaret, that you think that could be super helpful for those starting out in organic?
Um,
Your personal experience?
Well, the nutrient management, you have to show evidence of what you apply and soil testing. And so if you haven't been soil testing already, which we all should have been, you can add that. And then what's really challenging kind of is the integrated pest management and the, you know, some of those hinge on pesticide use. So if we're row crop farmers, we're mostly not using spray pesticide, vegetable farmers maybe, but so that's kind of out. I mean, we use rotation, we scout, and so we share scouting records, you know, what the crop scout finds and our soil test records. So those are certainly adequate. And they're all these things we're supposed to be doing anyway. So yay. If it encourages you to go ahead and keep the records, which your organic certifier is going to do anyway, it's a win-win, and those records can do for both.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that insight, Margaret. Always very appreciated.
Olga, let me share one more thing. The last couple enhancements we've done have been prairie plantings for pollinator, and we were going to do those organically, but after tilling and cover cropping, and then we weren't because we had to use Roundup. So just make sure you contact your organic certifier about using Roundup if you need to kill perennial vegetation to do any of these. Most of the information I found on planting prairies is reestablishing prairie or pollinator seedings in cropland. And we were doing it in pasture land or borders to waterways. And let me tell you, it's way harder to do into brome grass and reed canary grass. So I buckled and I folded and decided we would use Roundup one time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the challenge of conservation cover if you're doing it in cropland versus like even on the field border. If you wanted to add diversity, you're basically going to have to kill the existing stand if it's brome. And how are you going to get that accomplished?
And one tillage pass on brome doesn't do it.
Nope.
And in fact, in one area we did 2 Roundup passes because, and let me tell you, more dedication to doing this organically, and Xerxes Society had information on how to do pollinator and prairies organically, and it just did not work coming out of pasture. Too many perennial long life species.
Very interesting. So insightful, Margaret. You're like the expert of CSP here. So you're just sharing all these good nuggets of knowledge. So thank you so
Olga,
much.
I'm old.
She's telling me all the things that I would have told her. She's doing my job right now.
No, well, then in that case,
of what I would suggest. So
in that case, I'm going on mute.
Oh no! You feel free to join in. It was really, really good. Okay, but I do have another question that came in from, I want to say Jen. It says iPhone Jen. I would say it's probably Jen. It says, can you tell me more about a crop scout? Is that a service available by NRCS, private company? Thank you. Those were question marks.
Yeah, we don't provide those type of scoutings. You would have to probably work with your local agronomist at a private business. So yes, we require it, but we don't provide that service. That's beyond our knowledge and expertise. So yes, you would have to work with a local elevator or whoever you buy your current.
So Olga, I'm going to pitch in on that because we preferred not to use a scout that is associated with a co-op or elevator because they're really there to sell fertilizer and pesticides. So we hire an independent crop consultant that's all they do. Okay, they provide scouting services. And there are a few of those. There's an Iowa Association of Independent Crop Consultants. You can find them on the web. They're not terribly widespread in Iowa, and they don't have much experience with organic. We've used 2 over the years, and we kind of have to educate them about organics. But it's been okay. They learn, we work together. But they have an extra set of eyes that we don't always have time to have, and they pull the soil samples. which we don't always have time to do. So, but we just really preferred to go with an independent.
That's a great idea, Margaret. And some of that you can do your own. They're just requiring that you do crop scouting. So
Right.
we have some documentations, and if you feel comfortable, you can do your own crop scouting. It doesn't have to be hired by another person. There are criteria about how often you do it and what you look for. So you just need to document that you did that yourself. So you don't have to hire somebody to do it. You just have to have the documentation to verify that you were scouting your fields for pesticides before you applied or did weed control. So that it's more of a term to identify what you're doing in your crop field. But there are definitely professionals that do this for a job. So.
Rubyana, thank you. I really like it because, again, if you opt to do your own crop scouting, it's just another thing that we all should have been doing in the first place. So if you get yourself on a schedule with the CSP contract, so much the better. It's just a little nudge to watch the crop better and do a better job. Excellent.
Wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like CSP works, in a symbiotic relationship with the organic systems plan anyway. So it's just a matter of combining the two and going forward with that. So Rubyana, you mentioned that currently there are 22 CSP contracts in the state of Iowa, and I don't know if you have this information off the top of your head, but what is the dollar value, like the average dollar value of those contracts?
Oh, I would say typically the organic ones are between 30 and 50,000. Mainly just because they're smaller operations. You say you might have 5 acres or you might have 100 acre. So the contracts are typically smaller. You probably won't hit that $200,000 match, but yeah, you can easily have, it just varies per operation. I didn't have the slide in there. Each land use has a different payment. So like a cropland pays $750 per acre, just to do a little bit of math, or your farmstead also pays $750. Your pasture pays $3. And your associated ag land and your NIF is like 50 cents. So talking about getting a payment per acre, that's your base payment that you're going to get every year. So it just kind of gives you a starting point for some math. So.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
And the resource concerns, it depends on your operation. We have some people that meet 4 or 5 at the time of application. If you take that times $300, that's also your base payment that you're going to get paid every year. So that can add up pretty quickly of how many resource concerns. So the better the manager you are to start with, the higher your payment is to begin with the contract. So you are getting credit for your conservation efforts that you're already doing within your operation. So I think that's one of the benefits of CSP is it's rewarding you for your good conservation that you're doing.
Excellent. All right, you guys, we have about, 10, 15 minutes here. If you guys have any final questions. Otherwise, if there are no additional questions, we can certainly dismiss early. Just keep in mind that I will be sending that survey and link to the recording as well as the presentation. And if you could please fill out that survey, that would be greatly appreciated. Any last thoughts, Rubyana?
Sign up is this Friday, so I encourage you to at least call your field office and talk to them and at least put your name in the hat and see if this is something for you. I think it's a great opportunity to encourage more conservation and reward you for what you're already doing. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate of it, and check it out.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys, Rubyana shared that link, that direct link that's in the chat. What I might do, actually, I might include it in that follow-up email too, so you guys have it. In a sense.
Olga, may I ask Rubyana a last question?
Sure.
Rubyana, our prairie/pollinator plantings, they're not very old, so I know that you can't expect wonderful things at first, but we've got some areas that I think need to be readdressed. How do you handle that? That's in a contract that has been completed. Like we had an amazing amount of volunteer sweet clover and red clover in one of those stands, and the sweet clover I think we could live with, but the red clover is a real no-no in a prairie planting. So we might have to till it or spray it again. How do we address that? At the very least, I feel like we need to alert our county office. What do you recommend?
That would fall as part of your maintenance and maintaining of the enhancement. I think you should check with your field office to at least let them know that you're doing it. Like you're not,
Mhm.
I mean, if it's still under the life of your contract, then it's required to be there. So that's why I was like, if you're going to till it, you need to let your field office know why you're doing it. It's a weed control or a plant control. So I would at least notify it if it's under your life of your current contract to let them know what you're doing and what your intentions are. If it's a practice that was on, that would be where I would start with. You can do
Okay.
that because it's part of the maintenance of the practice. So
Yeah, the contract has completed, but just that red clover is not going to cut it. But it's not in the whole seeding, so we can do spot treatment, I think.
yes, the spot treatment I think would be totally fine and acceptable because it's part of maintaining the enhancement in the seed. So I definitely would recommend it if it doesn't match what you want it to look like. So
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. And Rubyana, if you don't mind holding on, I actually have someone else here that would like to have just a couple of questions at the end. But everyone else, if you guys don't have any additional
thank you for
questions,
joining.
thank you so much for being here today. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So we'll let everybody drop off here, and then I'll let Tom Manley with Marble Seed kind of do additional questions. So
Okay.
what I'll do, you guys, Tom, you probably don't want those questions recorded. Is that correct? And is that a correct assumption? You're
You're
saying,
muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't think it matters a whole lot either way, but it's probably better not to.
okay,
These are questions specific to our work with NRCS
you bet.
and how that work is expanding. We're hoping we have a collaborative agreement with